Welcome back to another episode of This Modern Brand, the podcast where we pull the curtain back on some of America's most influential brands to break down their strategies, values, and innovations. I'm your host, Jason Parks, and today, along with my co-host, Lindsay DeWitt, who happens to be the president of our PR and Purpose group here at Barkley, we're kicking off B Corp Month with a fantastic conversation today.
Yes, we are, Jason. We're just sitting down with Annie Angle, who is VP of Impact and Sustainability at one of my favorite B Corp brands, really one of my favorite brands, period, Cotopaxi. Cotopaxi is the colorful, feel-good outdoor brand to watch. Fans say, imagine Patagonia, but on happy pills, and you kind of start to get the idea. Their tagline, Gear for Good, means that they create innovative outdoor products and experiences that fund sustainable poverty relief and move people to do good and inspire adventure. Just adventuring recently with my family.
Where were you adventuring?
Picked up some products in Colorado.
Oh, sweet.
Of course, the mountains.
It's a very adventure-y place. So, excited to learn more. Let's dive right into it. Everybody get ready to be inspired. Introducing Cotopaxi's Annie Angle. Hey, Annie, welcome to the pod.
I'm honored to be here and honored to chat, and no pressure in terms of inspiration. But yeah, happy to be in attendance today and have a great conversation.
Awesome. Before we get to the amazing brand, I have to bring up, I know no one can see you because this is a podcast, but you've got an interesting background. And before we started our recording today, you mentioned is it cosplay day at Cotopaxi, is that correct?
It's cosplay day for me. I'm into the fantasy space. I have autism and ADHD, so the fantasy, sci-fi, gaming, and role-play game space for me has always been an area of happy inclusion that I have really leaned into the past year because I think it's important to experience the power of play, and frankly, as a sustainability person, not getting so enmeshed in the problems and being able to see the strategic solutions to hard circumstances and work in a collaborative, team-oriented way from a place of humility and play is really what Cotopaxi is all about. And they're also the kind of company that likes when their VP of Sustainability pops up with a Rivendell wallpaper on their Zoom calls. So I feel very fortunate to have ended up in a company that has radical acceptance and belonging for people who are wired a bit differently like I am.
Sweet. Lindsay and I definitely love it. So, but before we dive into the brand, and you gave us a little glimpse into yourself, but we'd love to understand, how did you land in impact and sustainability? What inspired you to get into this space?
Oh gosh, I always say I sort of tripped and fell and aimed my fall in the direction of sustainability, but I'm 35, so when I was in college and really starting to think about my career, sustainability just wasn't a space or a vertical yet. I bounced around in college and kind of struggled to find my thing a little bit, but by the end I was really kind of did a bunch of chemistry classes, English, and military history, and graduated with that. But my junior year of college, I found my way into a really fantastic, life-changing internship for a human rights non-governmental organization that was really working on advancing human rights at the height of the Afghanistan and Iraq occupations. And that really opened up my worldview very quickly. And I had the opportunity to work with some of the most powerful women I have ever met with in my life, women with stories who would make some of the most page-turning memoirs you could possibly imagine. But I also really got to see firsthand how frankly broken the aid sector was, how frankly not non-strategic some of our interventions were being in America. I felt quite complicit in that. But I also was able to see how, say, ISIS, at the height of their terrorist activity in Syria, was able to grab all of the water aquifers and controlled and leveraged the controlling of fresh water to maintain their power control. And so looking at the role drought and water and biodiversity aspects were playing in conflict and terrorism. And that really got me thinking about, how do we think holistically about these questions? How do we kind of hold capitalism more accountable? And so I wanted to go from there to being more in-house. And I worked in impact investing under a fantastic mentor and then was in the consulting, the corporate social responsibility and sustainability consulting, which was just a brand new thing. I was able to, back when B Corporation was located in Newark, and Jay, the president and co-founder at the time, I had some really beautiful interactions there and have been part of the B Corporation movement for a very long time. And then Davis Smith, the CEO and co-founder of Cotopaxi, was looking for someone in Utah who had experience with the B Corporation Impact Assessment, which is the assessment that B corporations do to show proof of their receipts of actually being what they claim to be in terms of being a corporation that benefits wider society. And I was able to walk them through that assessment, and I kind of just turned to him at some day and was like, I work here now and I'm not going to leave. So I love it here, and I've been here for 5.5 years, and it's been a dream.
That's awesome. Great story on your background for sure. We definitely know firsthand that journey of becoming a B Corp as a certified B Corp agency here at Barkley. And so it is super involved. And at that point, you knew so much about the company and the brand, I assume, in going through that process, the rigor that is required for that certification, and really the tenacity that it requires of a brand that not all other brands have, that commitment to continue that pursuit and continue to improve upon that score and that assessment every year. So we'd love to hear from you a little bit more about that, and would just like to hear, how has becoming and being a B Corp really influenced the company's mission and operations from those days that you took them through their first assessment?
The B Corporation Impact Assessment is just one of the most powerful measurement and standard tools I've ever encountered in the sustainability space. And right now there's the noise to signal ratio on standards and regulations pertaining to sustainability, ESG topics, whatever you want to call it, is pretty enormous in the wrong direction. And B Corp is such a trusted assessment to me. Like it's just as a professional in this space, it's an assessment I have familiarity with. But I also know that you can't hide any aspect of how you operate. Every aspect of how you operate is considered. And for me, starting at Cotopaxi, it was a great way to get to know a company before even working for them, in the sense that you really get to see exactly where that company is at in terms of its performance across sustainability metrics, including community, workers, environment, etc. And I could really see that this company had great values, but also that there was a need for someone like me to take it to the next level. And I think it was such a breath of fresh air after being in New York, working with big C capitalism, to be under a leadership group where I just never had to justify doing the right thing. 95% of my energy previous to Cotopaxi was trying to convince companies and company leadership to do the right thing. To be at a company where that was just not part of the conversation. It was all about the how, not the why. And so I was able to just roll up my sleeves based on that, and I knew exactly where to get started. And I think that that's what the B Corporation provides, beyond just transparency and a measurement tool to inspire customers. The reward back to companies in terms of really being able to focus and prioritize areas where you need to improve. The BIA assessment is just invaluable in terms of providing that information.
That's great. I think it's super interesting as you dig into the brand that you have a real focus on human sustainability, and I think that's kind of unique in the outdoor space. I mean, you usually see a huge emphasis on planet, climate, etc., which are obviously all great things. But can you talk to us a little bit more about the focus on human sustainability and the brand's initiatives in this space?
Sure. Thanks for that great question. At Cotopaxi, and I'm really kind of vigilant about this, we really align with the proper definition of sustainability in the UN Brundtland Report, which is meeting the needs of today's generations without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. So, and the term environment is never mentioned in that. The term climate is never mentioned in that. Obviously, those are really important verticals and issue areas to get right. But we really focus on this idea of intergenerational prosperity, and we're extremely concerned about wealth divide and wealth inequality, and the role that that's also playing into climate and planetary And I just really don't think you can solve planet and climate issues without also thinking of the human dimension. And we know that climate change is being caused by human behavior. So for me, how do you really stop the negative behaviors that are resulting in climate change? Well, you need to work with people. You can't just work with nature. And so we think about nature-based solutions, we think about that, but we're really all about the people. And in particular, our one of our co-founders and our former CEO, Davis Smith, had really grown up in regions where there had been a lot of injustice around cyclical poverty, and had just really recognized that as an injustice. It's not just a situational thing that occurs, it's an injustice. And it was something, it was an issue area that, the UN SDG goals, it is technically the SDG goal number 1, but it's one of the goals that actually has the least corporate following or engagement around. And so we really saw an opportunity and a need for corporations to, in a sophisticated, meaningful way, address this idea of human sustainability and not just talk about planetary. So yeah, that's kind of our approach to that. And it's been a delight to be able to focus and intentionally prioritize the social side.
Yeah, I love that prioritization of the social side. And as an agency, we're so focused and very kind of consumer people first. So I like that is at the center of your approach to sustainability. And we too subscribe to that holistic view on sustainability. I'm curious about accomplishing this mission and the goals that you have as an organization really requires that mission and your purpose really permeate your entire organization. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about what that journey has been for Cotopaxi and how you align your entire organization around your purpose and all of those metrics and goals that you're working to meet as a certified B Corporation.
Sure, and it's such a big question, and I would first of all say, are we in perfect alignment with our values 100% of the time? Of course we're not. Just like humans, we make dumb decisions. Sometimes we do values inconsistent things. We do that as a company too, but I'd say those instances are pretty rare, and if it's between a quick profit and doing the right thing, I can honestly say that leadership has always chosen to do the right thing, and sometimes it is hard. Sometimes doing the right thing is costly. That's right. Both on the personal side and on the corporate side. And sometimes companies, I think, need to actually use those opportunity instances to truly demonstrate their commitment. It's easy to make commitments when it's easy to make them. And there are 9 times out of 10, there's a business case for doing the right thing. But there is that 10th time where there is not a business case and you need to lean into that. And we strive for values alignment. And frankly, it's not hard to find because we have a tremendous group of people and employees and suppliers who we work with. And I'd say very early on, Davis and our leadership team really screened for character. We didn't just hire people who were smart and accomplished. We hired people who were smart and accomplished, but maybe had untraditional pathways, but who were really decent human beings, and demonstrated that in the interviewing process. And it has been the greatest honor of my career to work alongside the employees we've had. And just one example of the power, I think, of empowering your employees is early on in my tenure at Cotopaxi, there was a mid-level head of logistics who came to me saying that there had been a shipping container of jackets that had been water damaged and couldn't be sold. And the insurance company was asking her to show proof of destruction, which would require either landfilling or lighting our product on fire. And up until that point, there was really no alternative to getting an insurance payout for that. And she was really like, Annie, this is not values consistent. I can't do this. This is not the kind of company we are. Can you help me brainstorm around this? And so we were able to reach out to our logistics partner, Flexport, and Flexport was able to create an entire new insurance claim pathway that not just Cotopaxi, but other companies could use, which was able to use proof of donation as opposed to proof of destruction to get that insurance claim. And that's just a great example of how, in my boat, there's no barrier to entry to being in sustainability. It really requires all of us thinking in terms of systems and thinking in terms of making our benefit as big as possible and preventing as much of our negative impacts. And I think our employees do a really good job of that. And I really just try to empower that and to have an open door policy. There's not been much I've really had to do. There are a few areas and processes that we've had to learn and look into, things like circularity, which is complex, and thinking about what comes next in terms of our sustainability journey, what goes, like how can we take the idea and spirit of B Corporation to the next level. And so I really have an amazing democratic team of that. And I've very intentionally tried to go horizontal, not vertical, in terms of my definition of team.
That's an amazing example. We talk a lot here at Barkley about building powerful or impactful modern brands, and one of the ways you can do that is through partnerships. So I'd love to get your take. I know you've had some great collabs. What do you consider when deciding if a partnership is on brand for Cotopaxi?
For me, we've done a bunch of collaborations, and I think I won't necessarily talk about our brand-to-brand selling collaborations. What I will talk about is radical collaboration to achieve sustainability goals. And we prioritize what we refer to as radical collaboration. We don't understand this very closed-door policy, that competitor versus competitor landscape. I just think that interdependence is a state of biological reality. No one can operate as single actors. That actually doesn't serve your business, particularly in a climate of increased volatility. And particularly if you want to realize positive gains and punch above your weight in terms of a citizen corporation, which we certainly do want to do, but we have very limited resources. I mean, we've been a great success story and hopefully a business case for the fact that you absolutely can have triple bottom line principles and realize financial returns that aren't just for the few at the expense of many, but you can realize really positive gains in any way that you look at that. But collaboration is a huge part of that because, like, for example, one of our suppliers, our principal tier 1 supplier, we did a financial pooled investment with other brands to allow them to transition to renewable energy last year. That allowed them to decrease their energy usage and dependency on fossil fuels by 67%. And it reduced our top line emissions and our scope 3 by 14%, which is really incredible. And it cost us a whopping $5,000 to go do that alongside other brands. And so there's a lot of opportunities and business cases for a lot of collaboration in, say, your value chain, which if you really care about social issues and climate issues, 97% of our emissions occur within our supply chain. And the vast majority of the biggest risks we pose as a business to human society in terms of human rights also occur in our supply chain. So that's really where I spend a lot of my time. And the potential for collaborations to realize significant gains to all parties while also realizing a lot of cost savings, it's a no-brainer for that. And so we've worked with Patagonia, we've worked with the Outdoor Industry Association, we've worked with our suppliers who we really treat as equals. One thing that I think we did that was really cool is 2 of our principal suppliers at Tier 1, they're our biggest suppliers from a financial relationship standpoint. They have equity in our company because they're part of our company. And so treating those across our value chain as collaborators and equals is a huge part of what drives us. And there have been a lot of fantastic brands we've worked with. We've had the opportunity to do a donation for homeless individuals experiencing that really horrible trapping cycle in America with Bombas, and that was a really amazing, very impactful collaboration that we've done. We've worked with the IRC and Rebel Girls to assist young women from refugee families experience empowering sports like rock climbing and start to really build their own personal narratives of empowerment. So I've had the opportunity to work with so many amazing collaborators for change.
That's awesome. And you've detailed a lot of that collaboration in your impact report each year. And I think that that's a fantastic inspiration for other brands that are looking to achieve, similar things, is disclosing some of that collaboration, because that is absolutely a big part of it. In fact, it's, I think, one of the 5 ways that we talk about building a sustainability strategy for some of our clients. That collaboration piece is key because not one brand can do it all alone. And so I love that collaboration with the Sustainable Apparel Coalition and utilization of the Higg index. And there are all these amazing tools out there and other brands that you can really work with to achieve some of those goals. And then this, the initiative that you just spoke about regarding emissions and collaborating with some of your suppliers to achieve some of those goals on the environmental side is, I think, so key. So thanks for sharing some of that detail. With all of this achievement, though, do you feel there anything on the horizon that you feel you really need to work on, or that is becoming the biggest challenge, or something you haven't quite achieved yet?
Yeah, and thank you so much for asking this question. I wish more companies and podcasters had the tenacity and humility to actually ask the hard questions. And the truth is that laundry list for me is always going to be longer than our success, because I never want to rest on our laurels, and I always want us to punch above our weight. And I'd say the biggest thing that comes next, but also that we've had some kind of failure to launch areas around, has been circularity. Doing real holistic circularity, where you're really thinking about your business model, you're thinking about how you're sourcing, you're thinking about living wages, you're thinking about designing for repairability and durability, you're thinking about materials and biomaterials instead of synthetic materials. You're thinking about all of these pieces, as well as how to engage your customers on stewardship. And there have been a few elements of that have been, frankly, it's still hard to get launched on that. It's hard to know where to start. And so I think, like a lot of other companies, we have a very successful resale program, but we also know that resale alone isn't really circular. And then, frankly, that can also drive overconsumption habits depending on how customers are engaging with that potential. And so what we're really working on now is building a sustainability services aspect of our brand, where, frankly, you could work with us and one of our upcoming third-party collaborators to recycle all of your old textile and apparel. Either it would go to donation or it would be fully recycled, because the amount of textile waste in America, it's one of the largest volume contributors beyond food waste to landfills, which is insane. We throw away up to 35 pounds of clothing per family a year, which is insane to think about that. And in wealthier areas. But still, it's just an insane amount of clothing waste that we have developed. So that's one area that we're really thinking about, is our contribution to waste. How do we really close the loop? But it's been challenging to do that in still a very linear space. And particularly the apparel and fashion space is a really particularly linear, convoluted space. For its volume size, a lot of business researchers estimate that it is the least regulated industry for its size globally. And if you look at the rise of, say, Shein or Temu, Shein is producing more styles in 1 week than H&M is even doing in a year. That's kind of the volume of that. And these companies are shipping direct to customers in America. They're bypassing customs, inspection, duty, taxes by being able to ship direct to customers in America while being based in China and owned by the Chinese government. And so you're operating in that same environment, and we're a minnow in comparison to those sharks. And we've really found that we are kind of dependent at the pace of the federal government and regulators to really be able to move in this. And so one of the pivots that I've made recently is really to start being more aggressive about advocacy, which is why Cotopaxi is really supporting the New York Fashion Act, which is the first act of its kind to really hold apparel and clothing companies accountable for basic human rights, basic climate change prevention, basic things, basic steps that these companies should have been taking from the start but haven't been, and really advocating for a much more level playing field, not just for us and our competitive position, although there's certainly a business case for that, but because, frankly, until there's a shift away from this take, make, waste linear economy, it makes it very hard for individual companies, even with radical collaboration, to realize real sustainability. And there's only so much we can do. And frankly, what we can do around this is significant to us and maybe our tiny industry of the outdoor space, which breathes rarefied air. But it's not significant in terms of moving the needle. And so we're really thinking about what is Cotopaxi's role in terms of advocating for human sustainability in terms of regulation, which is why Cotopaxi and Patagonia are supporting this act. pretty aggressively across the outdoor industry, but also in the apparel space, along with some other amazing brands and individuals. So that's something we haven't gotten to yet, but that's a goal of mine this year, is to really help that act get passed.
Annie, this has been an amazing and very inspiring conversation, so thank you for joining us. But before we go, do you have any last words of advice or wisdom that you'd like to share with other fellow marketers?
Get clear on your intentions before you get lost in the tactics. I think both for marketing and sustainability, there's so many tactical ways you can go, and it gets really overwhelming. But if you're really clear on your motives and your mission, it makes it much easier to develop the tools and messages that you need to really communicate and realize the goals that you're achieving.
Excellent.
Perfect. Hey, Annie, this has been absolutely amazing. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.